us. Okay.
Oh, thank you so much.
Okay, well, good afternoon, everyone, here and online. And thanks for meeting us today. Thanks for joining this talk. And we are delighted to have Manny Pereira here with us. Manny develops pilot programs for ECA, the Bureau of Education and Cultural Affairs. And the programs apply online and blended learning, comic books and popular art, and storytelling initiatives to advance public diplomacy in Latin America. His background is in TESOL, both in the US and in Brazil, specializing in curriculum development for secondary school systems and non-traditional learning environments. He previously administered the Fulbright Scholars Program at the Institute of International Education in Washington, D.C. He's a native to the region. He's excited to be back and share resources from diverse educational programs that can be influential in the vibrant communities of Uruguay and Argentina. So thanks, Manny, for being with us today.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Thank you. It's great. I've never had my bio read out before, so that's pretty cool. I send it all over the place. They always have it on paper and stuff, but that was awesome. I appreciate it. Yeah, I'm Manny Pereira. I work in the Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs in this little small initiative called the Collaboratory. I'm sure everybody here in Alianza is familiar with the Fulbright program, the English language programs, at USA. All those programs are in ECA. They're in our academic branch, right? And then we have a big policy branch that works very closely with each regional bureau and works across all of ECA's programs to try and find innovative practices, innovative programs, really cool organizations to do comic book projects, and work, I think, across to amplify alumni engagement, to amplify existing initiatives that are going on at the country level here. We really try to push the envelope on creativity in a space like the US government, which is super creative, right? Right. No, not always, but not that the Collaboratory is the only creative place, but you know, we are very, very lucky to have the space, right, to be able to come to do these things, to share, you know, some of our resources, some of our past programs. I know that there's a bunch of paper in front of you, and I promise I'll explain every single piece, hopefully. But you can start with looking at one of these kind of while I'm talking. This is our one-pager. A big part of this kind of gives you a good understanding. If you need more, I have a bunch.
No, we have many.
This kind of explains, I think, in detail. This is like my business pitch. This kind of explains in detail all of our programmatic buckets. We do a lot with storytelling. We do a lot with virtual exchanges. We do a lot with facilitation and training our colleagues to be better facilitators of programs and be better connectors with the local communities that they're serving. So yeah, take a look. We do a lot of really cool projects. But to focus on storytelling, right? What a crazy thing to be talking about stories. What is that? It's crazy because stories are real, human, right? Things that have happened in the past, things that are going on right now, things that you talk to your friends and family about when you get home, right? We are constantly, as human beings, sharing stories. Who shares stories? Who tells stories? Right? Everybody. Even my friend right here. Even my YouTube people. Everybody always shares stories. What we're trying to promote are programs that bring expertise to be able to capture and empower people to share stories in communities that are underserved, communities that have been impacted by violence, by abuse, communities that have been impacted by extremism and terrorism. It happens everywhere, whether it's Latin America, whether it's the Middle East and Europe and Asia. These are some of the fundamental issues that are really, really important for the US government. And so our public affairs section, right, past Asuntos Públicos, in each embassy really works hard to advance those priorities and find ways to mitigate those problems. luckily, over the years and a lot of work and convincing people that this is a communication skill, right, for students, for young people, even for coordinators, for teachers, to be able to understand a little bit better, and that there's processes, right? There's curriculum, there's methodology that you can adapt, you can modify, and bring into traditional classroom environments or non-traditional classroom environments in an effective way, right? To empower your students. So that's really cool. I didn't realize. So we talked a little bit about that. Stories, true and first person, right? Your story about yourself should be true. It should be human. It should be honest, emotional, and not everybody gets that very quickly, right? There's a process behind it for them to get that out, that story, instead of just describing the situation, right? We describe a lot, right? Our Fulbright grantees, right? EdUSA, people that are getting advising, they describe their experience. I went to George Washington University for 6 months on a research scholarship studying business administration. Fantastic. We know that, right? We get that on our reports. You get that in your solicitation when they apply for the grant. That's good that they're saying that, but that's not what our leadership is looking for, right? When we go and make the argument to the big people over there that make decisions and give us the money to do things, they know that, and they're looking for something else to convince them. True first-person stories, anecdotes of real experiences is what is driving that home. What gives ECA the argument to go to our congressman in DC and say, hey, check out this story, right, of this Honduran immigrant, right, who is coming to a binational center, right, like in Alianza, except in San Pedro Sula, right, the murder capital of the world this year, and came and talked about how, his father had migrated illegally to the US, failed, lost an arm, came back into the community, and is sharing that with his entire group, his peers, right, the people that come to Alianza. And that's the environment, right? That's what we're trying to establish, is a safe space for people, young people, leaders, grantees, alumni, to come and share their experience in a story, not a description. And this is what we bring to our leadership and say, hey, look, this is working. Public diplomacy works. And we know more about the people we are trying to benefit, right? The people we are targeting our really good educational programs for. So stories, really cool. This is, I think, really obvious. Great. It's a piece of paper, right? This is a product, an output of a program, right? Someone wrote it, someone found out, wrote an article, and it's awesome. I can share it with you so you can better understand, right? But in our programs, we're building the process, right? It's impossible for you to understand this storytelling methodology with this workshop. I can introduce you to it, right? We can have a lot of fun, we can talk a lot, we can ask a lot of questions, but it's a process. And so we're not in it just to get this, we're in it to actually teach teachers the methodology and have them continue it over time. That's a really important objective of our storytelling pilots. It's not just for stories, it's for people to feel comfortable using stories every single day. Exercise. Who's that kid?
You?
Me, here in Alianza. My mom told me I had to share this picture. I was like, no, Mom, no. She's like, so this is me this is my story, right? This is me when I lived in Uruguay. I was born here. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, these are Alianza logos, colors, something like that. So, for me, Alianza built this crazy good foundation. I learned some English. I remember practicing the alphabet. I used to watch a bunch of movies. My mom would come pick me up, take me to the candy store. We used to come on the train from Las Piedras with drinking coffee and, mate. I would drink chocolate milk, no coffee. But yeah, so I started here. And so it's cool to come back. And, I have this really exciting exercise that I want to share with you guys. They're empathy cards. So I'm going to give you one. Don't read it yet. But my question that I pulled out of my hat is, where do you feel the most present? Right? I feel the most present here. I've come a full circle 20 years later, and I'm here. That's crazy. So I'm going to give you this one. Oh, I have a clicker? That's great.
Yes.
One more?
We need two more.
I know, you want
extra.
Got one?
This is extra.
Hmm?
Yes.
You all got one? Okay. Cool.
Following instructions.
Wait, no, read it yet.
Sometimes
So-
we have trouble following instructions, you know.
Yeah, I do too. I think it's a year of lying thing, maybe. But so
She's from Argentina.
she's from Argentina, so she follows directions.
No, she's more Uruguayan than any of us.
More Uruguayan than any of us. Cool. These are empathy cards. We use these a lot in these places that I mentioned, where we're trying to bring people in who've suffered from extremism and have them start opening up and talking to us in a really organic way. Empathy means putting yourself in somebody else's shoes and being able to reflect, right? Luckily, this isn't a group of random people, right? You guys are all colleagues. I'm sure you guys have gone out for drinks and dinners and stuff like that. So this shouldn't be that hard of an exercise, right? But I want you to flip your card over. Don't show your friend. Flip your card over, read it, and take 2 minutes. I'll time you. 2 minutes to think about the question, right? And think about how could you answer the question, giving examples, being specific, maybe even telling a story, right? About why this question hits you here, why it makes you think. Who has a really hard question? You have a really hard question?
Yes.
Do you want to switch?
No, that's okay. I got
Yeah,
it.
you're happy with your question?
Yeah.
Okay, are you sure? I'll give you another one. Okay, good. So take 2 minutes to think about the answer to your question. You can close your eyes, you can walk around. 2 minutes, but come right back. Okay, how are we feeling? Everybody think like they got an answer?
Yes.
Okay, luckily we have 12 people in our group, right? So I want you to turn to the person you're facing, right? So 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, and 2, right? And without telling your partner what your question is, start telling them your answer, right? You can, huh? Don't tell them the question. No. Just your answer, right? So think about what you just thought about, what feelings that question might have made you think about, and tell your partner. 2 minutes.
Can I use Manny, can I use any word that is in my heart or not?
Can you what?
Use any of the words from the
Of course,
question?
yeah. Just don't tell them what the question is.
Oh, okay.
If I change one of them,
You are my family.
my life is
Moses challenged.
You always have to guess the question.
Just tell them. One person should be.
I gave it to my answer.
Okay, hold.
Okay, now I understand it.
What or who poses
Empathy cards.
Muy varias.
I actually translated them in Spanish. I can send you them.
Okay, yes, I would love to. Yeah, sure.
When someone goes to your house, it's important that you make them feel welcome. Because you have, I mean, if you get to a point where you invite someone to your house, you have to feel comfortable having that person in your house. So when somebody goes, you should always show him or her that they're welcome by whatever, by offering by offering the place to sit. I don't know, but I think that's just the invitation not just the story. It shows that you care for others. Well, like they feel welcome. They are whenever they want, that it's okay for them to be there. I have to see no. Okay.
Yes, okay, yes. Yes,
What should you do? Yes. Yes. Can we tell them what the question was at the end?
So did both of you get a chance to give your partner your answer to the question? Yes?
Yes.
Everybody?
Yes.
Okay, who feels brave enough to share with everybody what their answer was and then tell them what the question is? You? Okay.
So I believe that mentorship has played a major role in my life, and the times when I realized what great mentors I've had is when I have to make tough calls or difficult decisions or plans or I don't know, especially at my workplace, my profession.
Great. That's really good. Can anybody take a guess at what her question was?
What are some important things that influenced you in your life?
Okay.
Or
Close. Can I say the question?
Sure. Tell the question.
When has mentorship played a role in your life?
Good question, right? I like that one. Anybody else want to share their mentorship card? I mean, their empathy card. You look like you want to share back there. I see you looking around.
Actually, I'm still not sure how to answer this. I believe it's not that I actually have a moment in my life that made me who I am, but I actually believe that my parents mostly are the biggest influence I have, and I've had a lot of teachable moments with them that built my character and took me to where I am today and how I am today. That's like the closest I can get to the answer.
Cool. And what was your question?
How has your past shaped who you are?
Okay. Really good. So you were shaping your past based on who influenced you in a positive way, your parents.
Yeah.
Very cool. One more? Who wants to share?
I could share.
Okay.
Well, actually, in parties and in, in celebrations, yeah, it's full of people. And also, sometimes when we organize trainings and I'm part of the organization, sometimes we also bring lots of people there. So, well, like I said.
Okay. That's an interesting answer. What was your question?
When do you bring people together?
When do you bring people together? For parties. Forget workshops, right? For parties.
It's hard to explain without saying
The
words.
Yeah. It is
I
hard.
didn't say it.
That's why. That's
why.
That's why we were like puzzle.
I was trying to listen to another question. I didn't get it.
Okay. So keep your card. What we're going to do is try it one more time. I have another round of empathy cards, right? Now you get it. You get the gist of the exercise, right? But this time, I want to challenge you to be very specific, right? To really try and think about examples of why. So if your parents are big influences on your life, what did they do every day at home that really drove that in you now, today, in what you're doing, right? If you bring people together for a lot of different reasons, why do you do that? For parties, yeah, to bring people together, but for what? For what occasion? Are you bringing people to learn? What kind of things are they learning? What kind of audiences? Things like that. Try to be as specific as possible. Okay, good. Okay, cool. Empathy cards coming your way. Don't look at them yet. That's the fun part.
Yeah, it could be very general, right? One more.
We
Right?
need one more?
Yeah.
No, we have one.
So same exercise. Take a look at your card and think about it individually. Don't talk to anybody. Look at it. Think about it. Think about your answer. Think about specific examples, right?
So hard.
Who has a hard question?
Yeah, me.
Yeah?
Yeah, but I will keep it.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
I have more empathy cards.
No,
Okay.
I will keep it.
Who has a hard question?
Yes. I'm gonna I have to.
You're gonna change it? Okay. This is a good question for you. Okay. Everybody's thinking about their answer, right? Take about another minute to really think about your answer.
You're saying what you maybe was not so hard, yes.
Specific examples, experiences, maybe things that aren't even real that you just imagine. I gave her a tough card.
Or a funny one.
Well, is everybody thinking? Everybody thinking? You guys are fast. Okay. So same thing. Turn around to your partner, right? But speak. Hold on. Before you start speaking, right? The person that's speaking first, right? The other person, the listener, right? Try really hard not to interrupt, right? Not to say, okay, not to say, uh-huh, or wow. Just silent.
Poker face.
Poker face, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you want to show
You have to say,
empathy. I go first. Okay.
All right.
Yes. Okay. Whenever I have a conversation, especially with Marcela, always trying to find particular, talking about a particular subject, and the other person shouldn't say anything. I think that that's
Being able to make negative
it can have a negative effect because you don't know what the person is, you don't know what the other person is thinking. It's hard for you. And then you need to know how you feel about whatever. But you are saying that the other person is being very quiet, so and you don't know whatever.
So
Well, unfortunately, you know, society and okay, not very comfortable with whatever it is. So I think that maybe I'm trying to maybe not. Maybe it's something that the person agrees with me, and maybe he or she doesn't. So with him particularly, whenever he doesn't say anything, because he's a very quiet person. Actually, so nowadays
yeah, that's why I said I thought.
Are we supposed to guess the question or not yet?
Not yet.
Okay.
Don't worry about the question. The question is the minimum. The answer is
I don't know what we want to do that.
Okay.
I told you it's hard.
I need to be on my
And
just not a person who is very comfortable.
It's so hard not to talk. Hard not to say.
I would take up another myself. So that's big responsibilities, like relax more and do things that would never hear and right? I feel like I'm very responsible. Yes, but if I am alone with you, maybe I can, stay the whole night. I feel like I have a request or adventures or I remember attending the Bahamas.
All right, guys, about 30 more seconds to share. Did you change? Change.
I think I really messed me up.
Good. Like, it's hard, yeah. You asked the tough questions.
Yes, it's hard not to nod and show you're still listening, right? The questions that I had was really connected to that.
Yep.
The fact that when you're talking with someone, how do you know that they are listening or understanding if they are not saying anything or doing anything?
What do you prefer?
That's a challenge, right?
Yes.
Okay, guys. What'd you think about the second round of the empathy cards? Harder, easier, a little bit more clear with the instructions? What do you think? Some thoughts?
But the listening, it was really hard.
Why?
Yes. It was really not to nod or say okay, or not to show empathy at all. It was like
Or
really
show that you don't understand.
Yep.
Because if you look at someone that's just looking at you without saying anything, or you feel like they're not paying attention to what you're saying, so you tend to do that to tell the person, I get what you're saying, I'm paying attention. So it's extremely hard to take that away.
Yeah, it's challenging, right? Anybody else can share some difficulties of why else it might be hard if you're just...
Because the person keeps explaining because she doesn't know if you got it. She repeated like.
I can say that especially Latinos. Okay? Especially Latinos.
I wanted to say, okay, I got it.
Yeah.
But it was like.
I hear you. before we get into the other stuff, you know, I like this exercise a lot because it's really simple, right? We can really get into it very quickly. The lesson learned behind the poker face, right, is just to go that you look at the word storytelling, right? It's telling. So you assume that, okay, cool, you have a good storyteller and maybe you're watching or listening to a story. But storytelling is reciprocal. You depend just as much on the audience, right? The place, the space that you're projecting your message, your story. It's equally, if not more important, to have a captive audience. You know, we don't go and implement these around the world and just say, hey, learn how to tell stories and then tell them to the wall. You know, we're trying to empower them and find listeners, right? What kind of listeners do you think we're looking for? Active listeners, people who listen, who comprehend, and have the influence to make a change. That's what we're looking for. So listening is so key. Yes.
People who actually listen, like that you're not just talking to the wall, that they can show an emotion towards whatever you're saying.
They can show empathy. They can show that they feel for what you're saying, right? That's the point. It's reciprocal. This storytelling thing, it's the most human communication ever form, tool, whatever you want to put it in a box and give it to somebody. It's for two people or more, or groups. It's not for the teller only. That's the least important.
And in order to be a good storyteller, you need to be a good listener first.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You have to listen to good stories. So back to the empathy cards, right? Who, either as the listener or as the teller, who talked about something personal? Yeah? That's a lot of hands. That's a lot of hands. Anybody want to share, feel comfortable sharing with what they talked about to their colleague? No, that's okay.
Well, I breathe.
You breathe.
I move away and I breathe.
You move away and you breathe.
Yeah.
Okay, what was your question?
What do you do when you get mad?
How do you stay grounded when the world gets overwhelming?
Okay, breathe,
I breathe.
calm down. Good. Get some air condition. Good. So a lot of people raise their hands, right? And this is the first time we're talking about these things. The first time you're seeing my face, probably. And there's some really personal stories going on in here. I'm listening, right? And I hear a lot, and it's great. You know, that you guys as colleagues, you know each other, can be transparent and very quickly through these little cards, you know, and these really weird questions, right? Start talking about things that are important to you, that are personal, that have value. You know, those are the kinds of conversations that we're trying to build. And these kinds of exercises is usually how we kick off our storytelling programs, to get people comfortable, get them uncomfortable too, right? Putting poker faces on, right? You know, language barriers is always, you know, something that's an issue. But through human communication, through a reciprocal exchange, you get a chance to talk, you get a chance to listen. Now it's your turn to talk, now it's your turn to listen. As simple as that sounds, with these kinds of personal, first-person, true stories, like, you get deep. And that's the lesson, you know? Cool. I'm glad you guys enjoyed that. Now we can get into like the process. We can do a little bit of story mapping, like where they exist, what's been the history of stories, and where they are now, right? I'm Uruguayan, right? But I'm an American as well. And I'm always, you know, 1 foot in Uruguay, 1 foot in the US, feeling really weird. Because I come here and it's like, I don't know where things are. I don't know the streets that well. I know where my neighborhood is, and I know where Montevideo shopping is, but that's about it. And then in the U.S., I know a lot more. You know, I've lived in D.C., I've been all over, but, you know, I don't relate as much to my American counterparts as I do with, you know, my cousins, my friends from here when I come here. It's like I never left. So it's a really interesting thing to listen to you guys talk about these exercises, because it's just different. you know, and that's new and interesting. And it teaches me as a facilitator, right, that it might not be the best approach to start with an empathy card, right? People might be more conservative, or it might take a little bit more to get them to feel comfortable talking about some of these things and answering those questions. So really, you know, before we move on to the next thing, I really want to drill home this idea of creating the space, right? The environment where we are now, right? Not so much the physical space. It works, especially if you can get in groups and stuff. Awesome. The physics is good. But it's so important, right, that Alianza, right, uses its momentum, its reputation, the services that are provided here. This is a safe space. I feel safe here, and I haven't been here in 20 years. And that's a really, really powerful thing for this. It makes a tremendous difference. So just wanted to share that with you guys. Where and how have we shared stories? I cannot wait. I'm brushing up my history of Uruguay. I'm a little dusty, but I would love to hear from you guys in Uruguay, at least, back in the day, Artigas' day. How were stories shared back then? How would people share stories and tell stories? Through songs, for sure. That's one vehicle, right? One tool, songs, okay?
Orally, like anecdotes.
Anecdotes, right? Just traditional storytelling, first-person storytelling? Absolutely. Sure. How would stories move, do you think? How do they get, if it's traditional just like this, how would people hear the same story in different places? Generational stories.
Grandpa too.
Yeah. Learn the same story when you're a kid. Everybody. Cool. Anybody else? Art. Definitely. Art. Where am I? Art. Yes. Another really good medium to share stories. It's sometimes very difficult to interpret, right? You need the artist to project the message a little bit, but art, definitely. My cheaters. You can look at the timeline. How else? Back in the day. We got songs, we got traditional stories, we got art. Newspapers. Okay, so print media, right? We're getting a little bit more modern, right?
I think that before that, letters.
Letters!
That were sent.
When was the last time somebody wrote a physical letter and sent it in the mail? When was the last time? Can anybody share?
I don't remember.
You don't remember?
20 years ago.
20 years ago. Yep, that makes sense.
When I was in kindergarten to my grandparents. Sorry.
To your
I
grandparents.
remember that.
I sent postcards, but not letters. I don't
Okay,
remember.
postcards, another one. So we're transitioning, right? We have print media, we have newspapers, journals, publications, sometimes radical, revolutionary, sometimes just promoting the news and sharing stories of things happening in the community.
Through
Cool.
pictures also.
Pictures, definitely.
Flyers.
Flyers, all these physical materials to share stories. Awesome, very, very helpful. How do we get stories now? Where do you guys listen to stories today?
Podcasts.
Podcasts. What podcasts? What podcasts do you listen to?
I have several radios that include podcasts, and Spotify has podcasts.
Spotify has good podcasts. They do.
And also TuneIn.
TuneIn.
Radio.
Yeah, TuneIn is very Uruguayan.
TED Talks.
TED Talks,
Because
definitely.
if you pay attention, they all are based on personal stories.
Yeah.
They start with the story.
Yup, TED Ed, TEDx, any TED denomination
Yes.
is founded on a story. True. You got podcasts. I heard you say a little bit of radio.
Yeah.
I think radio is probably one that started a long, long time ago and is one of the few that survives, today. Most people are getting their communication, their stories, the way that they learn through radio, and now podcast is like the cousin of the radio.
There are apps, that tell stories. For example, Call Up.
Really?
Yeah.
Unaware of these apps.
Yeah,
Yeah, apps.
I'm a fan.
So now we're really digital, right?
Yes,
We got
yes.
to digital.
Yeah.
We went from, okay, go ahead.
No, that going a bit back, but not that much. I think it's a conventional but still storytelling, stand-up comedy.
Stand-up comedy, definitely. Comedians tell stories. They might be pretty brutal, but they're funny, and it's a story about what happened to them or about what they saw. Maybe they fake it, but yeah, it works.
Yeah, and family stories. I was thinking WhatsApp. I mean,
Mhm.
I have a big family, but sometimes I hear stories of my grandparents or whatever, and I would just get them by WhatsApp. Which is funny.
So help me out here. Let's recap. We have storytelling models, tools, vehicles. Where do we start? Back in the day. Models. Someone here said it. We had traditional stories.
Like oral.
Songs,
Songs.
letters,
Letters.
pictures, painting,
Postcards.
art,
Art.
pictures,
Pictures.
newspapers,
Newspapers. What else?
What else we said?
Yep.
Post, the
Podcast.
podcast.
Sets.
Okay, so we're getting digital, right?
Yes.
Okay. Podcasts. Radio. Apps. Social media. Maybe.
yeah, social media.
Social media.
Twitter, even if it's a short post.
It's 280 characters, and they tend to like tell
Oh,
a
we
lot
had-
of stories.
YouTube videos.
Comedy. Right? YouTube.
YouTube.
I love YouTube.
Yeah.
I'm on YouTube. So for a long time, we can go through years and years and years and years and years of stuff. But if you really wanted to, right, you can still today, in 2018, can you still use all of these forms of storytelling? Yeah, definitely. Just because they're not popular doesn't mean they still aren't used and could be used. So,
Even before the oral storytelling, we have the drawings in the walls.
oh yeah, drawings,
Cave drawings
caves.
in the yes.
So this is what I was kind of asking how did stories move, right, generationally? But back in the day, there were migrant communities,
Yes.
right, that would come and draw a bunch of stuff on the wall and then go to the next rock and draw another course. But yeah, a long time. We've been trying to communicate messages, experiences, and anecdotes from our personal lives through stories. I'll say that 50 times in this workshop.
Like
Oh.
Egypt,
Hmm?
for instance.
In Egypt.
Egypt, like we know today stuff because they engraved it. So
Yeah, so there's a historical component too. We'll get to value in a second, but I like the way you're thinking. So here we have the vehicles, the formats that we could potentially use in storytelling programs, right? If you look at your storytelling for Pd Toolkit, which is right in front of you, the big red packet. This is everything. Everything. This is like the storytelling textbook in 6 pages. These are stories of stories, right? This is how we process our methodology in the realm of public diplomacy. And you'll be able to learn a lot about, I'm not expecting you to read it all, but you'll learn a lot about the different storytelling practices or vehicles and tools that we've tried to pilot in the past. And we're currently trying to pilot in the future, right? Hopefully meeting people where they are. That's a really important thing. That's why I had you list out all of these. Because yes, we want to be digital, we want to be innovative and apply creative uses of technology in the classroom. Plan Igual is doing a tremendous job in that. What we've found with our storytelling pilots is really meeting people where they are and what mediums are most popular. I can be honest, I was really surprised when you said podcasts, because I have a podcast to show you guys a little bit later that my team is doing. But when I got here to Uruguay on Sunday, I asked my cousins, I asked my second cousins that are younger, so the second generation, I asked, my abuela. I asked my uncles. I asked my cousin's friends. I was like, guys, you guys listen to the radio, listen to a couple podcasts here and there? They're like, no, man, not at all. I was like, all right, well, then I won't show you my podcast. But
Maybe in Spanish. Yeah.
that could be
Maybe
true.
one of them.
Yeah, it could be a language barrier. So I was surprised. I was like, no, Uruguay, modern, super cool. They have to be listening to podcasts. But they're not, which is cool. It was a reminder, right, that not everything new works, right? The other thing, we listed out here some of these things with TED Talks, with comedic shows, right? I want to differentiate real quick this practice of they call performative storytelling. And that's when they use comedians. That's when they have actors, theater people, right? Movies or stories. And so that's also a really interesting approach where, that person in performative storytelling, like we talked about a little bit ago, you really have to get that reciprocal effect from the crowd, right? If a comedian isn't getting any laughter, he's not feeling good about his comedy show, right? If an opera singer isn't getting applause, she's not really happy about her singing. So even on a stage where it might feel like all of the attention is centered on the storyteller, it is still very important. The audience plays a huge role. And Ted does a great job of doing that. So our formats. My picture here, we have the future of storytelling, right? With games, with TV, digital tools, social media, everything that we just talked about. You guys are on point. We have a lot of different ways to share stories. Elements of a story. What do you guys think? Elements of a story. What a weird way to pronounce things. What are characteristics of stories that make them good?
They have a beginning and an ending.
Okay, so they have a structure.
The way they are told.
The way they're told, so the beginning, middle, and end kind of thing?
No, the way the person tells the story. The
What do you
emotion that he or she can transmit.
The
Okay.
words.
The-
I know
the-
when people
the
tell
specific
scary
words.
stories and they use a light to,
Yes,
for instance.
whatever. Gestures.
So structure. Emotion, right?
Language.
What else?
There's usually a climax in the story.
Yeah. Sometimes it's anticlimactic. Okay, what else?
I mean, all the characters and the description of the characters and
Okay, it's character driven.
the plot.
A location,
Okay, the place.
the place.
My man, you said you weren't going to participate. I like that. What am I missing? Anybody say anything?
You said something.
You say something. Yeah, but it said, I said the plot, but somehow it's
In all of this?
There, like an attract. It has to be attractive or appealing.
Okay, yeah,
You know?
absolutely. Appeal to your audience. Sure. Let's see what I.
Maybe a good story could be awful if you tell them the story. But I'm a very bad storyteller. Yeah, teller. And when I heard the story maybe through a different person, I said, well, that is a great story. And when I try to replicate it, it's awful. It doesn't make sense. So I think that the teller is an important part of the story.
Definitely. Yes, for sure.
Because
Without the
it could be a great story, but
No, I hear you. And I think what you're speaking, this is a really important point. I think what you're speaking really closely to is, and we'll touch base on it right after this slide, is the idea there are a lot, just like these empathy card activities. There are a lot of storytelling processes, right? Who's a teacher in this room? Teacher, or has been a teacher? Carlos, I know you've taught somebody, so you probably have to raise your hand. You taught your little brother how to ride a bike, you're a teacher. Teachers, at least me, I'm a little bit neurotic. I want to have all my stuff in order right before I come and teach my English class in the present perfect tense of to be, But I want to have my curriculum. I wanted everything to be organized. And so and I want feedback. So if you're a bad facilitator, a bad storyteller, right, in this process that we teachers are so, there has to be a process and a step 1, 2, 3, 4, incorporate a feedback loop, right, for somebody to give you pointers, tips as a listener, an active listener, to tell you, hey, maybe you should start with, you know, a little bit more emotion, right? Maybe you should start with the end first and then talk about how you got there, right? Instead of going from the beginning, middle, and end. Fix your structure. So all that, I think, is a really, really good point. Not everybody's a good storyteller, but are we all storytellers? Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
So remember, first slide, what did I say? It's a, but not a, it's a.
I don't know.
But somebody said it.
It's a process.
She forgot. You see what I mean? So it's a process. Not everybody's going to be a good storyteller.
If I'm going to tell a story for one of my classes and I plan it, I can do it. But if it is
Because you
something
planned it.
spontaneous,
It's hard.
it's very hard. And I usually start at the end.
Yeah.
And then it doesn't make sense. But if I plan it, I can do it. You know what I mean?
No, I hear you. I hear you. Everybody's going to have their own process. So it's really good. Really, really good to vocalize some of this. I forgot what I wrote down, but you guys got a lot of it. Point of view, right? That could possibly be an element of the story where people are sharing their thought, the way that they feel about something, their position on a particular policy. They do that a lot with giving, I stand for this, and this is the story behind why. That's very, very common in political storytelling. It happens everywhere. A dynamic question, like our empathy cards, right? That really get something going on in here or in here to move, to think, to feel uncomfortable. We got that. Who said emotion?
I did that.
Good. Well, spot on, spot on. If you tell a story all like this,
Yes,
oh
I
my
said
God,
that.
you know, listen to you if you tell a story like that. But if you say, hey guys, I'm really excited to be here, and then you can move, you can go up and down with your emotion.
Intonation. I was thinking of intonation.
Intonation is really important. Yeah, these are some of the skills that little by little you start sprinkling onto your storytelling pie. Voice, very important. We talked about it. Character driven, right? Who's the voice in the room? Who's talking? Really, really important. Soundtrack, intonation, right? How is the story being told? How has it been projected? Like Cavani. I'm like, what are you saying? I'm like, talk to me, Cavani. I want to hear your story. Pacing, also really important, right? You can't blast too fast through your story because even a captive listener just won't get it, right? Try to pace yourself, right? Know that your audience is here. They might get bored for a little bit, but then you crack a joke, they might laugh. What I talked about, our storytelling process. I'm not going to spend too much time on this because I know as teachers you might look this up on Google later. But it's in your toolkit, you know what I mean? Somewhere in those links, you'll find a ton of examples of a storytelling process, right? There are psychological studies that say different cultures tell stories in a different way, right? The American culture is like this, very circular, beginning, middle, and end. They say, and this is proven, look it up on Google, ask Uncle Google. The Latino community, right? They go around like this, and then boom, the story. So it's different. You know, the captive audience might be different. You know, keeping in mind cultural context, who is in the room, right? It's all about creating the space, right? Where you're understanding that, hey, okay, cool, we're all teachers. Everybody needs a step-by-step, a process, a method. They're here, they exist. There's a million examples that are free, openly licensed. Who's familiar with Creative Commons? Creative Commons is your best friend with storytelling. CreativeCommons.org. Look up storytelling. All this pops up. All this pops up. I'll share another one with you. But a lot of what she said, right? Feedback and reflection. This is actually, I put a little white thing here. You don't see it right now because it's white. But that's actually a model for digital storytelling. right? What's digital about this process? Look at it. Share, right? We talked about traditional stories, oral storytelling, the way you share, whether it's digital, through social media, through YouTube. What else is digital?
Oh, you're writing.
The research, yes. The writing.
The creating the video, images, audio.
Here we go, right? What are the formats? Is it video storytelling? Is it a testimonial of somebody sharing about an experience, right? Is it a movie? Pictures? Is it an article? Is it a photographer taking a picture that transmits a message, a powerful message, right?
Everything can be digital.
Everything. These days, everything can be digital.
Even the feedback that you get,
Absolutely.
you get responses.
EdUSA is really good at that, right? In our storytelling for Pd Toolkit, a lot of examples of digital storytelling networks. That's the easy part about digital stories. You can create networks using social media, using WhatsApp, shared groups. That's what we've been trying to do on the digital side where the infrastructure and technology exists is, for example, we did a program in Delhi in India, which brought together women and girls who were participating in folk life festivals in these very traditional communities outside of New Delhi. And New Delhi is a poppin' place. There's a zillion people in New Delhi. But outside, there's no technology. There's a 2.4% internet penetration. How is it possible for them to share their traditional folklore, which is being scrutinized by the machista community in India? How can we let the broader community impact these women are making through traditional stories, right? Performative storytelling. So what we did, we sent out a photographer, we sent out a videographer, they did training with the women, and the women organizing the events. This folklore festival looked like carnaval, like a carnaval in India. They went and captured the women's videos. They presented digital products to the broader community, and every single American space and each embassy and consul in India, there are 5, did a massive social media campaign, and everybody knew about the Indian carnaval, from non-digital to digital, very quickly. That worked. It might work. Another more common, I think, for oral traditional storytelling, take a look at it. What do you guys think? Any thoughts? Teacher friends?
Books, novels, things like that.
Pretty much. Yeah. This is a common one. I like this guy, Dan Harmon. He's Creative Commons all the way. But this is a good example, I think, for secondary school students. I know we have some mentors here, some English teachers, where you can discuss, do it through a conversation hour, right? Give them this plot and have them think about a time where they felt uncomfortable, or a time where they overcame an obstacle. What happened? How'd they get there? How'd they solve the problem? And then how they returned back to their environment changed or reinvigorated, for the better or for the worse, right? This is a really cool one to use in the classroom. Brainstorm. This is where you use your Post-its. Are we ready? Everybody have pencils, papers? You guys need some markers?
Yes.
So pick one. You want one of these? Let's brainstorm a little bit. Can anybody tell me what a brainstorm is? What's a brainstorm in Uruguay look like?
To come up with ideas.
Okay.
As many as possible.
Exactly.
A bunch of.
Not filter all, it's okay.
Whatever comes to your mind.
Whatever.
Exactly. So let's embody that spirit, right? Don't limit yourself. Be creative. Get as many ideas as possible. I have a million more post-its. Okay?
And there are no wrong or right ideas.
Never. And especially in storytelling. Storytelling can be done a lot of different ways. We talked a lot about definition of storytelling, some of the models, some of the elements, right? Do you guys feel good about your knowledge of storytelling, or at least what I've been saying?
Yes.
Pretty good, right? You can think about examples, right? Now, this is what I don't know. This is what I need you to help yourself and help me figure out, right? What is the value of storytelling for you as Uruguayans, for the people that you represent here, for the community members in Uruguay, diverse communities, indigenous communities, everybody? What is the value of stories here? What value could it potentially have? What would your students, your mentees, the kids you advise, the communities outside the BNCs or Alianzas that are in the interior, that don't have the facilities, that don't have the tech, the resources, the high-level education, what could be a value of stories, of their stories?
Sorry, we have a question. Do we have to write one in each post-it? or
Yes,
just
that'd be
one?
ideal. I'd like one in each post-it.
Okay.
You can write a lot on one post-it.
Okay, that's
It's your decision. It's Uruguay.
If you're right now.
30 more seconds. All right, let's stop. We'll have another round of brainstorming in just a little bit. I see a lot of post-its, more than I expected, honestly. This is what we're gonna do. We're gonna, obviously, I assume that we'll have some duplicative answers, right? So we'll try to group them around these values. I'll start with you right here on the left.
Okay,
If you wanna share your values and then put your post-its up here,
okay. I read all of them.
read all of them.
Okay, help understand each other, transmit knowledge, share experiences people can relate to, and encourage others to do something.
Okay, you wanna hand them to me? Next.
Pass on information and stories, have fun, increase vocabulary, it's another language, the same. Learn about their own country, understand themselves and others, imagination.
Cool. Imagination. I like that. Okay.
I put identity, lower affective filter, vocabulary in context, belonging, community, build bonds.
Wow. A sense of belonging. That's pretty cool, right? I think that's something that's
Do you want
really.
me to help?
Do you want to help me? Do you want to help me group?
Yeah.
Oh, you're the best. Belonging. How cool is that, right? I think, in the U.S., it's an issue that's being suffered, right? Where people feel like they need to really talk about their right to live there, right? To reside there. And so a sense of belonging to a place and feeling like it's your home, that it's somewhere you're safe, somewhere that you can benefit and grow personally, professionally, super important. Super important. Fred, next.
No, it's this one.
Teach values and learn about different values. Learn from others and learn about different cultures and realities.
Very cool. Learn about different cultures. That's really cool. You can use stories to transmit culture quickly. With the storytelling process, the Spanish way of going like this, the American way of going like this, that transmits culture for sure. Carlos? Bring him here, bring him here. Tell him.
Empathy, create an open-minded society, identity.
Cool. Another one, right? A sense of belonging, a sense of identity, tolerance, right? Being a little bit less reactive to things that might be going wrong. That's really, really good. Carlos, can you help my friend here group them? I'll start with you over here, so you can meet in the middle.
To grow up,
Yeah, mature.
to keep moving on, something personal,
Okay.
and to change someone the way that it's thinking about something.
Yeah, definitely. Two things that you said that are really cool, and I'll take these from you. Stories can heal people, right? You can learn how to forgive, how to move on from a broken relationship, a death in the family. It's real, right? Carlos, here. We went out to Syria and did a MeWe storytelling pilot. It's in your toolkit. You'll see it. And these Syrian people, right? Their houses were bombed. Their family members became terrorists. Crazy situations. And we use these stories for them to move on from those situations, to feel less intimidated and less influenced by these groups because they have a powerful voice. They have a powerful message from an experience that they're moving on from. Really good. My friend?
Remember the story, the experience, and pass to the generation.
Memories. Stories are like textbooks these days. You can Uncle Google every single story out there. So to transmit a message over time and space, really, is important. Yeah, memories.
Well, stories can inspire you and can inspire others.
Okay.
Stories can definitely help underprivileged families.
Okay.
Stories can help critical thinking. Stories can teach us many things that can change the world.
Stories can change the world. Can I
Oh,
keep
yeah.
that one?
The world?
I'm gonna put this one here.
I know.
Do you want to share? Last one? Yep.
Understanding.
Understanding.
I think I have all
Everybody's.
the same.
Okay, but read them.
I think
It's great to just read and hear.
Empathy, learning, teaching, tradition. You can transmit tradition. Help understand, empower people, and show. I don't remember why I'm showing.
Showing, demonstrating.
Demonstrate.
Yeah,
Maybe that's
being an example, right? Being a really confident voice to a little brother, to somebody coming up, right? As mentors, you guys do that all the time. but being personal, sharing stories about your own experience, how you were influenced by your parents in this particular way, how mentorship has played a role in your life, they'll relate. Instead of just saying, hey, I'm Manny, I'm your mentor. Let's talk about going to the Universidad de la República. You know, that might be a little bit boring, but I'll leave it to you. This is good. Can I have that? I really want to point out what she said, though, about tradition, right? Pretend I'm not Uruguayan, because I know the answer to this. It's obvious. But is Uruguayan culture unique? Of course. Of course. Every culture is unique, right? And it becomes more challenging to maintain traditions that used to be the way that we do things, right? Stories maintain those in different formats, right? I have, you know, I can't wait until, you know, I don't know, Murga is on Spotify. You know what I mean? Imagine that.
I think Catarina
Arate Catarina is probably on there. But Don Timoteo, maybe not. But imagine, you know, that's the new wave. That's modernization, a new generation. I don't know, but I highly doubt that Carnaval will go away in Uruguay. But it remains, you know, whether in these mediums or in those from the old days. But tradition is super important, and stories do a lot with that. A lot. Anybody missing?
I'm missing that. I guess that mine are more or less the same as everybody else.
Okay.
I wrote, learn about values, share beliefs, transmit your visions, empower, inspire, improve, teach culture, teach, learn,
Teach.
and improve all.
Love it. Great. Pass them around, please. My groupers doing awesome.
Not easy.
No,
Mine
that's
are-
why I made you do it.
I put them all
You
together.
seem like the smartest one.
Mine are they all together.
Here you go.
So Rosario will pick up yours.
Go ahead.
Okay, so mostly the same.
That's
thing.
okay. Let's repeat and reiterate.
Not feeling alone, improvement on current condition people are living, getting empathetic responses, and impact society.
Yeah. Does Alianza do things with underserved communities in Uruguay? Yeah. How do you guys tell everybody else what Alianza is doing?
This is pro.
Social media. We share that on social media. Yeah.
You share some stuff on social media?
The YouTube
A lot of
channel,
stuff? The
And
YouTube
they
channel?
love it because they all check it.
They can all see it, right? Yeah. So Alianza does a lot of storytelling already, right? Where I'm getting to with the last part of our workshop. How are we doing on time? We got about 15 minutes. Doing good?
Yeah, sure.
Doing good? Okay, you guys tired? You guys need a water break? Anybody gotta go to the bathroom? She's leaving. No, I'm just kidding. So the reason why I brought this program model canvas, my title is the Strategic Program Designer. I design programs, many of which are in this here. Our pilots from 2 years ago, which I can now share 2 years later. But anyway, our pilots from 2 years ago give you all of the storytelling programs that we've implemented with many public affairs sections around the world, not just in Latin America. Right? My first storytelling project was with Peru, working with a cocoa bean farmer. I was like, this is crazy. But he wrote a really, really, really good digital documentary of the cocoa bean process story of how it goes from little seed to my cup of bakole. You know, it was awesome, and we captured it in a digital story. This guy is living on a mountain, you know, outside of Machu Picchu, and has no contact with the world, and is one of the biggest distributors of cocoa bean in Peru. And now we have this digital story for other cocoa bean farmers to know how he processes his material. Very, very open guy. And you can read about it. I'll give this back to you. I brought this, a blank program model canvas. This is going to be the hardest part. That's why I left it to the end. Because you don't have to finish this, right? And I'm not expecting you to come up with a storytelling program in 15 minutes. But I at least want you to capture on this paper with your colleagues, how you could possibly do this. Like you just said, we share English Access Micro Scholarship Program video testimonials from first year and second year students in their transition. I'm sure that happens, right? Alianza shares all of its PR programs through its Facebook page. I've seen them. I follow Alianza on Facebook, you know? On YouTube, we're sharing this right now. Stories are happening, right? But I want more. And I want more from Uruguay, I think. I would love to see more stories. So even if it's not possible, we're brainstorming. I want you guys to work together to try and ideate some of these. Are we all looking at this canvas? Yeah. Okay, 2 quick things. We already did like half of it, really. Okay, does everybody have one? Yeah. Okay, get your pen ready. Okay, ready? Okay. I do, I have 3. You should have a blank one right under yours. I gave everybody a blank one. Yep, so you have one, obviously that's annotated. This one is like a guide, it will help you. And you also have a blank one, right? Okay.
She needs one. Which one?
For the purposes of this exercise, right? I want you to grab your pen, marker, whatever it is, and put an X on budget and put an X on funding. Not worried about that right now. That comes at the end. Worry about funding and budget later. Okay? Now, right? When you're thinking about your initiative or when you're teaching your students, who do you have to think about first? Who do you think about first when you're creating something for somebody? Students. Yeah, your audience. Your audience, right? You guys know better than I do what audiences you're serving, right? So we're not going to brainstorm that. But the reason why I made you do this is because audience value is a big part of this program model canvas, okay? If you want, you can come back at your Post-it notes, but the point is your audience value and your key objectives should pretty much be the same. Your key objectives are more geared towards broader Alianza goals, right? And then your audience value is what they get out of it, right? What do micro scholarship students get out of the program? What's the value for them? They learn English, they communicate with each other, they have exposure to American experts and American teachers. You get the gist, right? There's a lot of value, okay? We did a lot of it. In terms of key activities, right? We highlighted some of the models that you can use, some of the vehicles and tools that are available for storytelling, right? Within those audiences. So we did a lot of listing. Now it's your job to work with your partner to put it all together, right? As teachers, we got this. This is easy stuff. This is easy stuff. I'll repeat it again. You have your audience value right here. Come look at it. Your target audience, you know, whoever your students are, who you're mentoring. Be specific. Where are they from? What regions? Are they from the interior? Are they from the coast? Are they from Montevideo? Where are they from? What's the difference? Be specific with your objectives and your target audience. And be specific with what you want to get out of it. You can work with them. I'll go here with them. Yeah. Okay. What? Okay, you have a specific. Okay, let me tell you. Okay. You have to create a lesson plan, a program, an imaginary storytelling program. Right in front of you, you have your Storytelling for Public Diplomacy Toolkit, which has a lot of information on those, how we design them.
Okay.
You have our FY16 PD Storytelling Pilots, which is 10 storytelling programs, which will give you a lot of ideas.
Okay.
Right? Here in Uruguay, and in Alianza, you guys are all Alianza staff. You know better who your audience is. To the right of the paper, right? You look, audience?
Yes.
Right? And right here, we listed out audience value already. Okay? Key activities. Use these models. These are the vehicles for stories. So your key activities have to be utilizing some of this. correct?
Mhm.
Yep.
Mhm.
And then the rest, you have, where's my other one? You have this one that has guiding questions, empathetic questions, that will help you structure your activity. My last thing, and then I'll let you get to work. I'm here for questions, obviously. This is what I use to design programs, so I don't expect you to know how to use it immediately. But if you can't figure out the value, or if you can't figure out your communications channels, how are you going to get the word out? No. It's because you're brainstorming really fast, and I'm only giving you like 10 minutes. That's probably why. So skip it. Go to the next one. Work with your partner. Divide it up and see where you come in the middle. But this is just a template, right? Great. 10 minutes, guys, and then we're sharing.
Yeah, you can grade it. You can grade it.
Is that a lesson plan object time? It wasn't like.
Yeah, it wasn't.
Objectives have to be smart.
Yeah. That's not a me or.
My friends, if you are feeling a little bit lost, some tips on the screen that might help you. Thank you.
I'm joking. I don't know. Everybody.
See, I get it. Okay, let's go.
Now, was sharing about challenges, difficulties, and how we able to overcome those.
Yes.
But as we started studying, so we can make it.
Yes, it's just for them to understand.
Sort out during the course.
Yes.
Bueno, directly. The value is a book. I think that is it can help them see that they are not alone. Okay.
Growing up, or I don't know. I consider growing up the growing up. Yeah, but growing up. Empathy, well, I could say that.
Yeah, empathy. I think that it's related to
Understanding themselves and others, right?
Inspire. Lower affective filter.
Does it say that?
Yeah, one of the things that we added.
challenge.
Professional development.
I would give us the option for video or writing something. I mean, that's already like an essay, journal.
Right? Key activity.
Key activity. Word of
Parents are key partners. Bien. Entonces, but I was thinking of when the students experience, maybe they do that. I don't know. 2 weeks ago, yeah, but they haven't asked. Victoria, in their neighborhoods are we haven't had those. We did record some, but there are some Alianza testimonials, but not from the teaching program.
Guys, so with the last 5 minutes of your program model mapping, I want to challenge you again to be very specific with your activities and be very specific with the audience, right? Alianza visitors. From what Alianza? What kind of visitors? Women, girls, boys, teenagers, high schoolers, college kids.
Will create parents or tutors, no? Maybe we give for because what you say was really useful to your child. How is it important for him that value inspire others, show that they can get family audience value. Yes. What are your objectives? Meetings.
By using different channels.
Yeah. Gather con la carta.
I think that maybe they can share a personal experience.
Emotions will
but given the option.
Yes, yes. Sharing strategies, sharing teachers, written, but you can I mean, our objective was to parents. Because they may read it. Maximize.
Set expectations.
My friends, about 2 more minutes to wrap up your program model canvas.
Hours they devote.
Yeah, exactly.
It's very important that you notice that time. We need you have a lady.
I know.
We also need you.
Yeah. Key resources. Put that on there. Put that on there. Toda la propuesta se hicieron.
Girl kids. That's very personal. So the channels
Is it here?
how would you refer to, how would you share program outcomes? How would you share program outcomes? We can share personal experience.
Yes, I like this idea. Maybe great teachers or from the program itself.
1 more minute. Final touches.
Oh my God. With permission of the parents.
Yes.
How will you Yes. How would you
20 seconds.
Google forms and analysis of data.
Yes, you know what it is like. Sometimes you need to go through the experience. Yes. People who
a letter for the new access students. No access, right?
Okay, friends, pencils down, papers down, rest your brain. Good job. Again, I really appreciate your patience because it's a tough exercise to do in 10 minutes. It's my fault. I talk a lot, so I only gave you a little bit of time.
That's okay.
I would love to hear from everybody, honestly, in the last couple minutes that we have, to hear about what you were able to brainstorm in this short time. And maybe we can get some feedback from the group on how we can further detail that model. So who from this group can share about the pilot?
Well, the objective is to get more involvement of parents and tutors in the Access program. And so we were thinking about the possibility of parents creating letters to new access students, telling a story. Parents are tutors, right? And creating a story when they begin with the program about their lives and motivating the student to study and to continue on that. And we were a little bit worried about privacy here when we were analyzing the channels. We said, oh my God, they mean their private stories. And so we were thinking that maybe some parents parents or tutors may want to give us the permission to publish them later and to serve as reference.
Sure. That's pretty cool. Parent mentor stories, right? I think we talked about it a little bit earlier, like a teacher can make themselves vulnerable with their students. It further cements that relationship. In my experience, it always has. A good point on privacy, right? But parents could remain anonymous. They could be used as digital examples that students could take with each other and flip through. I like it. So can you repeat to me, what was your objective again?
The objective was to inspire other students, to motivate, to get the student engagement, to get commitment.
Sure. That sounds great. I think parents and mentors will do that. Any feedback from the group on their parent mentor story letter initiative to inspire new access students
Like
to
some
participate?
questions to ask parents so that they know what to say, or that you can help them focus
Right
their,
there. Some prompts.
their
Some
ideas.
prompts. Maybe some empathy cards.
Yes, something like that.
Cool. I like it. I like it. Awesome. Good job. That was a good 10 minutes. My friends, next.
Our objective is to inspire other students and future students, maybe, on messages from teachers all over the country.
Okay.
So the process would be we have some professional development instances, and maybe to start a storytelling process there and share with our teachers some of what we shared today.
Interesting.
And then ask them to tell stories about, like, maybe successful stories and challenging stories about their students and about situations with students, not the specific student, but like stories about students. And then maybe as a second stage, we would record some of these stories, or also take pictures of these stories. And then, yeah, we have some ways to share it in social media. The idea is what is to be an Alianza student, what is to be at the Alianza, what is to belong to this community.
Yeah, I like that. One of the things I think that is hard to always say, think about your target audience, be very specific on who you want to target. We work with students, we work with grantees, we work with women, girls, boys, men, university students, researchers, academics, business leaders, entrepreneurs, small enterprise, SMEs, whatever they are. We sometimes forget about our teachers and the people that are working to make programs happen. And similar to what you guys are doing now, I was there too. And it just so happened that my job made me facilitate storytelling programs. But teacher professional development is fundamental to any teacher's growth and feeling that they're comfortable in a classroom setting, traditional, non-traditional. I'm all about training teachers, and we have a lot of resources, the collaboratory that we curate, that we can share with you. Not just storytelling for Pd Toolkit, but actual curricular materials that they can integrate, books that they can have their students read that have really good stories. If you're interested in that, hit us up. Very good. Good job. 10 minutes, people. 10 minutes. That's awesome. I got in the back.
We actually went a bit off topic because
Cool.
I mean,
I'm with it.
we connected it to something else. We actually were thinking more of a general idea of what is going on right now in the world. So we thought about having a program for promoting stories about people who have experienced violence in their life and abuse.
Okay.
And it might work also with our students that come from critical contexts, or not that critical, but they're not in the best backgrounds. So we thought of a program about kind of like an EA meeting or something like that, where you start talking in a circle, but it's about abuse, and the people that would come would be people who would like to learn from other people's experience and try to deconstruct that idea that we have from society, and also people who would like to share their experience to kind of like what Shasita said about letting free of that thing that you're talking about, and coming through that experience. And we thought that it wouldn't need to be actually something like you needed to share it yourself, but also we could have a professional work there who would read aloud what the person needed to tell, and if they felt like they could be brave enough to talk more about it, to get more specific information, or if they feel that they needed to say it themselves, they could. If not, it would be a great way to share experiences with other people that would like to hear them, even if they're not in that environment themselves. That's why we also thought about connecting with places like Now and Midas, and what might work to have podcasts to share around stuff like that. I don't know if you want to add something.
Carlos, anything to add? Really good, really good. I think for me, and feel free to share thoughts with them, obviously. For me, I think the key takeaway is that, we mentioned a lot of Alianza audiences and Alianza goals, but there are also state goals, right? Public policy objectives, right? Diplomatic objectives. Gender-based violence is obviously prevalent here in Latin America. It's something that's very important to our neighbors at the embassy. And I think that, my ears are open, their ears are open for projects that bring in communities, underserved communities of women and men, right? There's a lot of programming going on for men to better understand women's rights, to better understand the impact of violence on women. And it's important, because there's a lot of noise out there, and you guys know what they say, you know what I mean? And so there's a lot in that. So I like you integrating audiences that come through here, but also really thinking about broader human rights issues. I think that's important, and it'll bring people in the room. Very good. 10 minutes. You did it. This is like an advocacy group anyway. Good. Friends?
Okay. Well, we're pretty much aligned, so it was a similar thing. Our objective is to promote all the programs that we have here, and to get so people can get opportunities for professional development, and also to be part of all the programs that we offer, because sometimes we just keep the English teaching, Alianza Inglés, but we go beyond that. Mm-hmm. So the idea is, to collect testimonials, and also one of the objectives is to go beyond the audience that we already have, because we have an audience in Facebook, we have an audience in YouTube, we have, how can we go beyond that audience and promote what we do? And we set up collecting testimonials and sharing through, since we don't have a budget.
We don't have a budget. We're working on that.
And also, we share, well, we thought about using social media, word of mouth also, and well, TV, radio, street billboards, and
Yeah.
I don't know, to promote it. But the idea is to share the stories through testimonials. That's why we need an audience. And also to the audience I want to reach is well, potential students, potential teachers, and also potential partners in order to incorporate new programs or to even strengthen the ones that we already have.
Absolutely, absolutely. I really liked two pieces of this. Back home in ECA, right? I think if you guys remember, you might not. The collaboratory works a lot with every single program office, Fulbright and USA English language programs, our alumni office. We've been trying to help them incorporate storytelling methodologies and connect them with partners that are story creators, pretty much, like Story District. They come and they capture testimonials like Gabriel would. There are a lot of partners out there that could be supportive, and we'd be excited to help you connect to those, to help you figure out the funding and budget scenarios. You know, collaboratory is small, we're mighty. And so, you know, that's a really, really good point of partnerships, right? And to highlight the diverse programs. It's not just English language learning. They're not just exchanges. You have a space for conversations on gender-based violence, for conversations on corruption, for conversations on drug trafficking, for conversations on maintaining Uruguayan tradition and culture. There's a lot going on in Uruguay. You know, right before I came here, I'm really good friends with the consul at the Uruguayan embassy. Her name is Susan. Does anybody know Susan Ortria?
No.
Anybody know her? She's the consul. Anyway, she invited me to La Noche de los 12 Años, the screening.
Yeah.
I had no idea the movie was coming out. It was nominated for an Oscar. I was like, what is this? So I went, I enjoyed it. But the point is, like, you can connect and do outreach and market the broad resources that are available with stories. It's possible. And we're here to help you.
Great, because it will be great that our partners tell our story.
Well, yes, make them do the work.
So it's not us who
Yes.
are telling the stories. We just put them there and then they replicate.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think it goes to something you guys were saying, I think, with the professional development, right? The training of trainers. You can very quickly become an expert in talking about this and sharing resources. Sharing resources is easy. You're just an interlocutor. But if you show your partners, take the time to show them that this is important and why it's fulfilling their objectives, Alianza's objectives, broader Uruguay national objectives, then it makes sense. And little by little, you start curating testimonials, podcasts, radios. It just trickles on from there. But I like what you said. Partners and broad, diverse programs. Very cool. 10 minutes. Last but not least.
Want to go? Okay. We're going to get into our own programs, and we thought of Alianza Pro, which is it has a lot of careers, but both of us are in the teaching program, so we kind of decided to focus on it. So our audience is student teachers, all right? And to encourage new student teachers. Yeah, absolutely. And the objective is to set clear and realistic expectations for them and to lower their affective filters, to inspire them, right?
To explain what being a teacher actually implies, because sometimes we think that they think that it's something that is not real. I mean, I don't know how to put it, but the expectations that they have are not actually, they are not met throughout the program if they are not, I don't know how to put it. No, but if they are not aware of what actually implies,
Maybe it doesn't.
what being a teacher actually implies.
Maybe it's not on the pamphlet.
Exactly.
It's not
Being a
in
teacher
the-
implies a lot of hard work, commitment, dedication,
Meeting deadlines.
well, meeting deadlines, yes, many
The
things.
process, exactly. We're thinking more of the process of becoming a teacher, right? And what it means, what you have to study, what you have to prepare, and that's all. We thought we could use either testimonials, but also we use a Moodle platform.
Moodle.
Yeah, so we have our course there, and well, we already have testimonials there, but actually they are for the group itself, because we ask students to share, for example, at the end of the course, like a reflection. What were the challenges that you face? What's your teaching philosophy after doing this course? So what are some challenges that you would face as a future teacher?
Sure.
So we have many things that, but they are for the group internal, actually. But why not asking them to share that, either orally or written, or maybe somebody is more comfortable writing something than telling and being recorded. They can feel they are not alone, right? They grow up with the values, right?
Yeah, good job. I like it. I was a student teacher, you know, in UCF in Orlando, and it sucks, you know, like it's hard.
Oh, right.
Because, you know, you have unrealistic expectations. You think you're going to go in there and be, I'm a teacher, you know, but you have to co-teach with somebody.
This, out of the blue.
You know, you have to, you know, a lot of the times you have a supervisor that's looking at you like this while you're teaching, you know, so it's an uncomfortable environment. You know, I think that develops good teachers. You know, if you can suffer through that, then when you get your own classroom, you're prepared, you're comfortable, and you're confident and ready. So I'm excited about this student-teacher conference.
You can relate.
I can relate, yeah. But a similar experience, though. I think these are some shared models here that we're talking about, because I remember having to reflect on my experience through a lesson or, you know, through a report.
Yeah.
And a recommendation, you know, aside from all of this, but as a former student teacher, you know, 5 years ago, I think that it would have been helpful for me to better understand the process through the trajectory of being a student teacher. So maybe saying, hey, you've been in the classroom for one day with someone watching over you. What's your teaching philosophy? And then check back in a month later when instead of being here, maybe she's here. You know, what's your teaching philosophy? How has it changed? You know, how are your perspectives changed? How confident do you feel? Empathy questions. Instead of, why does everything have to be reported all in one big brain dump at the end? I don't know why we have a system of doing that with our programs, with everything. But try to look at it as a process, as a trajectory, and maybe include some very achievable goals. Instead of saying, you will teach 50 students and create 10 lesson plans. You know what I mean? Sometimes those are unrealistic expectations. Or maybe even teachers with unrealistic expectations who have been through that struggle can share stories to you and show you that these are unrealistic expectations that really drill home that something should change.
Sometimes that's what also happens. Maybe we think that they would be comfortable doing this or that, and then it turns out that they are not. So if we have this two-way street, like if we can talk with them, we can actually set realistic goals for them and help them be the best teachers they can.
I like it. I think you're working in the spirit of empathy, in reciprocal communication, and really listening to your beneficiaries, your grantees, your participants, your students, whatever adjective you want to use to describe them. Yeah, very, very good. Did everybody go?
Yes.
I had 5 groups. I thought I had 12 people.
Yeah, but
One left.
Oh yeah, one left and
Yeah.
one incorporated. Okay. Well, thank you. Obviously, it's a huge honor for me to come back to Alianza after such a long time. I see Marcela somewhere around there, but you know, we met in a consultation. You know, when the outgoing public affairs officer was out there, we go to every consultation, everything that's in Latin America. I go and I talk to them about our program, talk about storytelling, and finally, I met Marcela, and she was at one of my trainings. We did a stakeholder mapping similar to what you did for me over there. As part of a USA training, and you know, through her colleagues, you know, we've kept a really, really good conversation of trying to pilot programs in Uruguay. You know, I've tried to not emphasize as much that I'm Uruguayan, because maybe they might think I'm biased or something, but I'm like, look, I want to do things in Uruguay. Let's make something happen. Feel free to email me, use me as a resource, as a knowledge base. I may not have all the answers, but I got a ton of colleagues who are good at this, who are good program designers, who work in other binational centers and spaces, who have resources. Every single year, we put out a notice for funding for pilot ideas, right? It's not $200,000, it might be like $10,000. But it's a small seed fund for you to at least start setting up the foundation for your initiative. You know, we're open and letting you guys know to do that, but you have to create the idea. You have to further detail what you maybe you throw this away and never look at it again, but at least you go through the process of putting together a plan that incorporates stories through many mediums, using many elements that really fits the needs of all the audiences that are in Alianza. So really, thank you again. It's been an honor. Appreciate you guys. You guys all participated great. Some people don't. You'd be surprised. But Uruguay's cool. I was nervous. I was sweating. I was like, oh my God, it's going to go terrible. But thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I really thank you for getting me on YouTube.